So let's give Barbara a warm welcome.
Tack så mycket. It's great to be back in Sweden. I feel part of my destiny, actually, when we're talking about life's meaning, part of my destiny was discovered here in Sweden, that I had, though I didn't think so when I first came. In fact, I thought it was the dead of winter, and I'm a Californian, and I thought, oh my goodness, if I get out of here, you know. But I came right back again because of the heart connection that I have here, and because of the piece of my life that in retrospect and looking back is a part of my discovery here in Sweden and my experiences here in Sweden. And I didn't, at the beginning of this journey, realize Sweden was going to be so important to me, not just in people that I love, but in my own growth and experience, because I was the big California therapist, kind of, scared to death. And I just had to learn how to trust myself and try to figure out how to get on and off the buses and the tunnelbana, which was a big challenge for me because we never use buses and subways in California, at least in my experience. And so it was also it was a challenge because it was so cold. And I didn't have warm clothes. And so I had actually borrowed what a friend of mine in Sweden calls lap boots. But she had been in Alaska on working in someplace way out. And so what I had when I came here was were these lap boots with the thing that goes around and the fur on the outside, and a huge, big, 4 sizes too large coat with a fur hood. And the first time I managed to get into downtown Stockholm and I went to NK, I was kind of weird looking because the women all looked so swish. And there I was clunking along in my lap boots, but it was the only thing I had to wear, and I wore them the whole first time I came, it was 3 months. So in speaking of destiny, part of my destiny was mapped out not by my conscious decision, but by my inner guidance or by divine guidance or something for me to come here in Sweden. And so when we look at destiny, I think sometimes it's happening to us when we don't know it's happening, that we're on our path, but we really don't have a conscious clue about it. But there is some kind of a motivation within us to find it. And I think sometimes, you may have to translate this, Tomas, but sometimes it's like a blind hog trying to find a truffle. It's sniffing. It's kind of sniffing your path along. And there are other people, I'm sure, that absolutely this is where they're going and that is their destiny and they follow it. But for me, it was more like following my intuition a step at a time. And I did have a path. I did know I wanted to help heal. I did know I wanted to heal myself. I did know that I wanted to find a way to help people heal from their past so that they could listen more clearly to themselves and to listen to the spirit within them. And whether it was I'm going to write this book or whether it was more like a step at a time. And for me, it was definitely a step at a time that I took. And the reason why in this whole finding our life's meaning, it's a discovery process for me. And I'm still on my path, and I am still discovering. And I think one of the things that people say to me sometimes, what inspires you? I never know ahead of time exactly what little miracle is going to happen on my path. I meet someone, and they're part of my destiny, but when in the meeting happens, I don't know that. Tomas is part of my destiny. And I remember the first time I saw him at a lecture in Galleri Medmera. I remember him very clearly, like I knew something about him. There was already a connection with him, but I didn't know that intellectually. He was just this tall, gangly young man who asked a question. And so we never know exactly what is going to be part of our path and our destiny, but it's a discovery. And in the process of discovering our destiny, our path, we're also discovering ourselves. And pieces of ourselves that we lost, or pieces of ourselves that we denied or repressed. And so it's finding all the pieces within us that have come from our experiences, and learning how to learn the lessons from the experiences and to gather them together and make some sort of sense out of our lives. And what I now call a congruent narrative or story. And congruent is an English word that means make sense of. I think that's the best of it. And what the brain scientists are now discovering is actually that heals our brain, is to make sense of our lives. And so even without knowing it, we're probably in the process of trying to make sense of our life. Unless we quit, unless we give up, and basically just try to stay in a box. And societies, I think, sometimes encourage people not continuing on learning, but staying in a box, settling for, I'm okay in this box and I'm going to stay in it. And so it's those adventurers who have the courage to move forward and get a bigger box even, and then a bigger box, that find, I think, their own, discover themselves and discover their destiny. And the other thing that I've written down here is forgiveness. And I'll talk about that again, because I think it plays a big part in our self-discovery. Because basically for me it's just, it happened and I can let it down. I don't have to keep chewing it. I don't have to keep bringing it up. I can begin to learn to find some kind of peace within myself about my past. This is not new. This is ancient. If you read mystics and poets and stories, fairy tales, a lot of them are about finding the path, finding the jewel, finding the princess, finding the, I love the Tolkien Ring books, because to me, they're metaphysical books about finding what joins together, what connects me with my spirit and my wholeness. And I don't think also that we do it alone, though I do believe it's an inside job. That it's definitely an inside job because I have my own keys within me, but we don't do it alone. And when Tomas talked about his dream of having a community, I think deep within ourselves there is a yearning for community. In where I live in Arizona, I live among many Native Americans, and there is a reservation very close to the ranch. And the ranch is Apache, Mescalero, Cochise land. And so people come onto the ranch and they feel that energy of the Native Americans who lived and fought and died there. And their spirit is there. But they knew something that quantum physics now talk about. The Native Americans and many primitive people knew that we were connected to everything, that everything had energy in it. The rocks had energy, or the trees had energy. And quantum physics now pretty much says, and I'm not terribly knowledgeable in that field, it is so tremendous, but everything's one. And if you read scriptures from not just the Bible, but many scriptures, many ancient traditions, there was this sense of all is one. That somehow or other, the way they say it in my tradition is we're all children of the same God. But that claims that somehow or other there's a connection between us. Now, what the brain scientists are now saying is that actually my unconscious, perhaps superconscious, right brain is connected to yours, unless you've shut down or I've shut down. And we resonate with each other and attune with each other. Sometimes I say we swim around in telepathic soup, but our thoughts impact our environment, our feelings impact our environment. And I'm the one who can manage to work with mine so that I create a harmonious environment first within myself. And then I can perhaps reflect that out to other people. And if destiny is, that is my destiny, I can say that that's my destiny or my path. And one of the ways I get that is by going back and find out the ways, the times and the places and the experiences that I had that got me off my path. And I became something other than who I was. And when we're children, we very often lose our souls, or we lose our sense of self. And we try to become what we hope will get us some attention, or we hope will get us some safety, or we hope will get us some love. But we become other than who we are authentic. Basically, we no longer are whole. We split off, and we become the really good little girl that's always making everybody happy, or we become the kid that just is always like this, or we develop these personas or masks, actually, to get along with the world. And sometimes in the process of doing that, we really do forget who we are. We forget our own inner essence. We can forget our spirits. And people speak of soul loss. I don't think you can lose your soul, because I think it's so innate. But we forget about it, and we deny it. And I have so many people say to me when they come to Star, or they come to the ranch, well, Barbara, maybe it's true for you that you think there's something good in you. But I know there's nothing good in me. So where did they learn that? Where did they decide that that was safer for them to not feel how hurt they were, because nobody ever saw them? One of the words I learned very early in Sweden was titta på mig, lyssna på mig. I know my Swedish isn't good, but I think you know what those words mean. Because people would start saying things like that, and they said them often enough that I began to learn a little bit of Swedish, including some of the Swedish swear words I learned right away. But it's like they felt like nobody saw them. And yet I would say, was your mother blind? No. But it was like the seeing of me, of who I am, not what you want me to be, not your projection of me. But we try so hard, we sell out to be what it is that we hope that they want us to be. And so we take on other people's projections. And Tomas just read me a little article that I don't know what it was in, but it was in Swedish. And there's something they have discovered that's in the brain called mirror neurons. And what the mirror neurons are is within us, we reflect back what we see. And that's actually a part of your brain. And so when we're very, very little and we're confused or alone or hurt or whatever it is like that, we mirror what we see. And we mirror the faces that we see and the attitudes that we see. But it isn't just, I know that in therapy. I know that because so many times people say, well, I'm just like my mother, and I didn't want to be like my mother. Or it's like, oh, that's the voice of my father, or whatever it is like that. And what we now know is there is a part of the child's brain that just absorbs it. And in the process of absorbing their projections on us, we become them or like them, and we hope that then they're going to love us if we are like them. And for some kids, that works a while. They become conformists. They are going to stay in the box. And for other kids, they never quite make it. They never quite feel like they fit the box. And they're kids, people who have an angst with them, that have a disconnect within them between their heart and their head, or their left brain and their right brain. You could say it in so many different ways, but they're not congruent inside. And those are often the kids that get into trouble, that are in a lot of pain, but they just can't manage to fit in the box. And there are other kids who manage to fit in the box, and they do pretty well. And sometimes they die in the box without ever discovering themselves. But sometimes they have a crisis in their life. And I believe in the Chinese meaning of the word crisis, which is opportunity and danger. And so I always see a crisis. In fact, that's a good time to work on yourself, because it's both a danger and it's an opportunity. And so when people have those crises, they very often discover themselves. And they don't just discover their own authenticity. They very often connect up to the light within them or their spirit. Please use your own words. It is not in the word. It's in the experience. Words are left brain. And when you have a whole brain, which is balanced left and right, head and heart, then you are in cooperation with yourself. And you have a body, mind, a whole experience of the self. And that is a profound experience. And I fortunately have had enough times when I've sat with somebody when they've had that kind of an experience that I believe it. I believe it. And we give it meaning. We actually already are giving it meaning anyway. If you're stuck in the past, the meaning you bring to what happens to you now is old meaning. If, for instance, you have a belief that basically you can't trust anyone, or you're not a good person, or somehow or other you bear a cross of guilt, and you don't even know where it came from, but you're always guilty about something. For my family, it was the children are starving in China, you eat your food. So somehow or other I picked up I was somehow or other guilty for the children starving in India, which was ludicrous, but it was like my little mind thought, oh my goodness, I better eat because children are starving, because I didn't really understand. Children are literal. So when somebody says to them when they're very young that, like people actually say things to their children, I'll give you one example out of many, is like, if you're not good, I'm going to send you to an orphanage. Now, in the child's mind, they don't know that that's a metaphor. They think it's true. And so they try really hard to be good because they're very literal. And when little children are their bodies and they are their feelings. So when they're stopped or they're told they're bad or they're shamed or you know, they're told their feelings don't count or you can't feel that way. And sometimes it's just the bad stuff that's stopped, it's the good stuff. Sometimes it's like they are in touch with an angel or a spirit or a sense of something magical. And sometimes that is also, don't talk that nonsense. I mean, that's not true. You can't feel that way. You can't have that experience. So we grow up learning how to shush ourselves, how to not listen to this incredible, vast wisdom of our right brain. And I believe, and I talked about this the other night, that part of our destiny is to heal ourselves. And forgiveness, I'm going to tell you what I don't think it is. Because the ego misuses forgiveness to control other people, to manipulate other people. It often it makes somebody else feel guilty, or it's conditional. I will forgive you when you, I will forgive if you. That is a conditional kind of forgiveness, and I know a lot of people think that's forgiveness. It's not forgiveness in my definition. Or I'm better than you are. So it's like I'm a spiritual person. So there's some people, we can all do this, who get into an arrogance of spirituality that controls other people, that dominates other people, that's very egotistically oriented. And it's like, I'm such a wonderful spiritual person that you poor little thing down there, you know, I will forgive you. But it's really all about me. It's about me feeling superior to the person. To me, what I think forgiveness is I'm gonna look at it, I'm going to work through it, I'm going to feel what I feel, but ultimately forgiveness is, it's not here anymore. I put it down. And when you put down forgiveness, I mean, it happened, and accept it. You don't have to like it. But when it's just not anymore, you're not working on forgiveness. And I believe in working on forgiveness. And I notice that when I've forgiven, it isn't an issue anymore. I don't have the trigger anymore. It's like somehow or other in my mind, I've let it go. And it's kind of not in present time. What we do when we forgive is free ourselves to be more present now and move forward and find the true destiny that we have before us and meaning in our life. But when we're stuck in the past, you're riding a bicycle looking backwards. So it's like the point of looking at the back is not so you keep fighting the same old wars. The point of it is to look at it and let it go with forgiveness. And the other thing that I think helps a lot in letting go of the past is find the gift. Find the lesson in it. If you can find the lesson in something that happened to you, it's much easier to let it go. It's like I think most therapists become therapists because of they've learned something from their childhood. I think you can look at poets sometimes and artists, and they're working on their past in their art in order to transform it and move ahead in your life. So I'm not forgiving for somebody else. I'm forgiving because I don't want to carry it anymore, and because I want to be able to see clearly now. And for all the things that I can't set down and walk forward, I'm dragging with me. And I drag them with me into my next relationship, into my next job, into my next whatever it is. And I tell you, I'm tired of dragging stuff. I don't want to do it anymore. And I was going to tell you this incredible story, which I told the other day, but I'll tell it again. We had a Rinpoche, a Buddhist Rinpoche, come to the ranch for New Year's. And he gave us lessons every morning. And he actually just wanted to come to Arizona and be with some friends, but he decided he wanted to make a contribution. So he said, I'll give you lessons and blessings. And so it was wonderful. And he was one of the happiest people I've ever met in my life. And not a bit arrogant. And he told us the story of the Dalai Lama had sent him back into Tibet to teach. And so he taught for 3 years until the Chinese put him in prison. And in prison they tortured him. They broke a couple of his legs. I mean, it was bad. And somehow or other he got out after quite a while. And so with the translator, he was telling the group about this experience. And at the end of it, he said, he didn't speak much English, but there was a translator, does anybody have any questions? And so a very high-powered woman financial advisor from San Francisco raised her hand and she said, how did you deal with the people who tortured you? And he said, well, I really knew they were doing a job and that they were creating very bad karma for themselves. And at that point, he put his head in his lap and started to sob. And the group was like shocked. They didn't know what to make of that. It was like, because we gradually came to understand that he was crying for the Chinese. With such compassion. And he had let go. I mean, you could call it forgiveness, but it was even beyond forgiveness. It was like such compassion he had for somebody else's pain. And part of our destiny in opening up our heart is to sometimes feel such compassion that we want to sob or we want to dance. But it's the process of opening up our hearts that really begins to, we find meaning in our life. And he was such an inspiration to us because he was so funny and happy and loved the dogs. And he was just an embodiment of somebody that was light. That's the best I can say it. Because here we are in Arizona on a ranch doing therapy and stuff like that and Native American traditions. And he's this person who's just joining in, with us. Though he can't understand the language, and he just was one of us. He became part of the group. And to me, I will always, always keep in my memory his being there, his presence, and what it meant to me about how you can go through really horrible times and get through them. It's really important in the process is to heal your mind, to begin to look at the past. I think that's important to do, or else we drag it along with you. And you always have choice. You have choice. And I think sometimes that God is always, or your soul, or your spirit, or whatever word you're comfortable with, is always trying to wake us up. It's always kind of, something comes into our life, and we have this funny feeling about it, or something comes into our life and we're really upset about it, or something is always trying to get us back on our path and to reaffirm our path and to give us little tiny hints, like a little step forward, and we don't see them. We don't see them. You all know the story probably about the man who, there was a flood coming. And so he's sitting on his front porch, and somebody comes in a pickup truck and says to him, "Come on, the waters are rising. So here, get in my pickup truck and I'll take you to high ground." And the man sitting on his porch said, "No, God will save me." So the pickup truck man drove off, and the waters rose. And so now the man goes up to his second story, his second floor in his house, and he's leaning out a window. And somebody comes in a boat, and the boat driver says, "Come on, hop in the boat, because I will take you to high ground." And he says, "No, God will save us. God will save me." And so then he goes to the rooftop, and a helicopter comes. And the helicopter yells down to him, "Come on, catch this basket, we'll take you, we'll save you." "No, God will save me." And of course he drowns. So the story goes that he goes to St. Peter at the pearly gates, and he said, "Why didn't God save me? Why didn't you save me?" And the voice comes back, "I sent you a truck, a boat, and a helicopter. Why didn't you take it?" So it's like we have to be part of the process. We have to engage in the process. We have to sometimes take some action. When we get somebody's coming in and saying, "Here's a truck, the water's coming," maybe we should hop in the truck. Because I think life is always trying to get us healed. I think part of our destiny is to heal ourselves. And we miss them because we expect somebody else to save us or something to reach down from heaven and pick us up. And I don't believe in divine guidance, but I gotta be part of, it's co-creation. I mean, I believe I've got to plug myself in, or I've got to listen and take some action, which is required sometimes, that I just can't sit on the front porch and let the waters rise. And so I think it's important that we heal our minds so that we begin to access this tremendous amount of wisdom within us, and so we know when to take action. And the world is filled with interesting, wonderful people that you can learn from. I think you can learn from everybody. I think everybody's my teacher. I can learn something from everybody. And that's where I get my inspiration, is usually from people. And other things too, but people are the most inspiring things to me. And are there some people that don't inspire me? Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of the others. The other thing is listening to your negative voice inside. How do you talk to yourself? And people filled with negative self-talk. And it's one of the most damaging things you can do. And when people say to me, "Well, I don't really have any heart, Barbara," or, you know, their negative self-talk is vicious, just so embedded in their thinking. I say to them, "Do you have a pet?" "Oh yeah, I have this cat. I just love this cat." Or a dog. I'm a dog lover. But it's like, I say, how do you talk to your cat? Oh, my cat is this wonderful thing. She curls up on my bed. I love my cat. And I say, well, how do you talk to your cat? I have this beautiful, wonderful kitty cat, and I'm going to feed it all kind of wonderful things and give it a little bit of fish, and I love it. And I said, well, then you already know how to talk to yourself. You've got to put yourself where you put the cat and talk to yourself the way you talk to the cat. And people go, oh, I never knew I had that voice. But they have it with somebody. And it might be a dog, it might be a cat, it might be a friend, it might be a child. But turn the light in on yourself. Because, as I jokingly say in the airplane, it says put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And because otherwise you can't help anybody. So turn the light in first. Talk to yourself. It is so important in your healing. And also, if you want to find your destiny, and you have to learn how to care for yourself and talk to yourself in another way. Because you give meaning to everything based on what your past is. So it's like clean up your past. Let it go. Open up to the possibilities that are available right now. There are always possibilities available if you get up enough and open your eyes enough to look around you. Sometimes, I remember once I was on in fact just recently I was on an airplane, and I was reading a book called The Mindful Therapist, and it was called The Mindful Brain. And so I was reading it, and there was a man sitting next to me who kind of acknowledged that I was reading this book and kind of smiled at me. And then he said, you know, I'm a doctor in this big hospital, and we just had this man come and talk to us about the brain and about getting old and about a lot of things. So we had this little conversation, and he said, I'll send you this article. And so I got this incredible article about how to avoid getting old. I mean, and becoming senile and getting dementia and everything like that. And there were some things. One of them I'm not so sure I liked too much, but it said never retire. And sometimes I think I'd like to partly retire, you know, just partly retire and play a little bit more. But all the things is keep learning, keep being with people, find a spiritual path, and find meaning in your life. And I'll tell you another story. I was in London giving a talk at the University of London, and I sat down for lunch, and a gentleman sat down across from me, and so we got chatting, and he's from Belgium. And so in the chatting we did, I said, what do you do? And this was a conference on birth, and he said, well, I work at an Alzheimer's hospital. And I said to him, what are you doing at a conference on birth? And he said, well, we have discovered that Alzheimer's is a regressive disease. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said that people who get Alzheimer's get younger and younger and younger. And we go with them at the age they are emotionally. They might be very old physically, but we go with them at the age they are emotionally. And what we discover is at the very end of their lives, or toward the end of their lives, we put them in a soft womb of pillows in their bed, and they completely relax. And when they pass on, they are at peace. And I thought about so many times, he's written about it, but it's in Flemish. And I keep saying, translate it, I'll get it published. But these are people maybe who have never made sense of the narrative of their life. Maybe they are stuck in some very old pattern. And as they lose a lot of their left brain and doing things, remembering phone numbers and not taking care of themselves, they become more and more a part of their unhealed story. Right brain material. And so I think about that sometimes, and then if you stay alive, your brain keeps making new connections. If you stay interested, your brain keeps making new connections. And if you find some kind of a spiritual path, that is also one of the things this doctor said about this article. And I don't think it matters, for me, it doesn't matter whether it's Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, or just whatever. It might be nature. Like the Native Americans around me really worship nature. It's their God. They see God in nature. And, but it's what happens to your inner world if you have made some kind of sense and have some kind of a spiritual path. I think it's tragic that in this world we end up fighting about whose God is right. Because the experience of the spiritual experience, I don't think you can put the names and the labels on it. It's the same. We're all mammals. And they've also done research now to show that there is an altruistic part of our brain. And I'll tell you another story, that there were two twins who were born, little girls, and one of them was dying, and one of them was thriving. And they gave up on the one who was dying. They just couldn't do anything with it. And some nurse, they were in separate beds, separate places, and one nurse, out of compassion for this little girl who was dying, and because she got some kind of a right brain intuitive message connecting her heart to her head, she picked up the little baby that was dying, and she put the little baby down beside her sister, because they had been in the womb together. And I have this picture. And what happened was the well baby reached her little arm over and put it over the dying baby. And the dying baby got well. So what kind of a heart connection was that that healed this little girl? And so we have to really look at developing our own heart and compassion in relationship with a wise brain. I mean, I'm not anti-intellectual, but does the intellect serve the heart? Does it serve your destiny? Or does it serve being right all the time? Or staying separate from the human community? So judgment also keeps people stuck in the past. Self-righteousness, grandiosity, I'm better than everybody else. You aren't part of the human family. And you don't heal yourself. That's the point. You don't heal yourself. And this is, you could say this is a self-serving approach I'm taking, or a selfish approach, but put on your oxygen mask first. Turn the light inside first. And it's not like you turn it on once and that's it. It's that you continue to heal yourself and you continue to look at yourself. And it's part of your path and it's part of the meaning. Because as you do that, you will give a different meaning to what happens to you. And your life story will be not like the people in the hospitals that my friend from Belgium was talking about. I was telling Tomas that I was doing a documentary on inspirational women in the 90s, in their 90s, because I wanted to find out, they were all women I knew, and I wanted to find out why were they so fabulous? You know, what was it about them? That they were fun to be around, they were doing something for the world. One woman said to me, you know, Barbara, I just can't die. She was 96 because I've got to finish this book. And it was about forgiveness. And Laura Huxley, when I went to visit her, she had all these balls and asked me to just sit down, and there were no chairs. And so it was like I wasn't quite sure where I was supposed to sit down. And so she sat down on one of the balls, and she said, it's so easy to move around on these. So her living room was filled with not chairs and sofas, but these big round balls. And so we sat there with, we were videotaping her and laughing and bouncing around on these balls. And she was still making a contribution. Aging is a matter of the mind. It is a matter of your approach and your attitude. And we can all do something about that. The other thing which is a block to healing is being real little. Being really, I don't mean age regression little, but, oh, I'm this poor little person, you know, and I can't ever speak up, and I can't make any difference at all because, you know, I'm just pitiful. And listen to how I'm talking to myself. And my actions will obey what I'm saying to myself. And I will think of myself as pitiful. I will think of myself as a victim. I will act like I'm pitiful and a victim. And what do you attract? People respond to you in the way you present yourself. And so you have a choice here. And you can all do something about your life and give it different meaning, give it a positive meaning. Like I say to people sometimes, do you realize you're a miracle? And they say, what do you mean? I said, the fact that you are still alive and you went through all of that, you're a miracle. And it's like they think, it never occurred to them that they are a success story. You know? Or else I say to people sometimes, you know, I don't think I could have survived your childhood or what you went through in the war or what you went through with all of this. I'm not so sure I'd still be standing. You are a success story. And so if people can begin to feel about themselves like some self-esteem and some, even though you became a quiet person or you became this, those were all ways you learned how to survive. Those were all masks you wore to stay surviving and to reach back and uncover their true self and begin to feel like, wow, I'm a miracle. Because I think some people are. I think some people are a miracle. And I'm going to tell you another story, just, I don't know why, but it just came into my mind, so I'll tell you. Because it's about birth and what happens at the beginning. And I had this man come to a star group. And his story was that I took him back to his birth, and he had a fabulous birth. He was born in Budapest. He was Jewish, the only child of this family. He was born with a doctor and his mother and his father and his grandmother in a bedroom. And he had these incredible early memories, just incredible early memories of flowers and things like this. And then he came to a memory like when he was about 5 years old, and he was walking in mud toward the camps. And I'm telling you this story because I want you to see the roots in this man were positive, in spite of what happened to him. The sense of internal, somehow or other, positive feeling about himself. And he must have had parents like that, because they went to the camps and they were kept together. The grandmother, the father, the child, and the mother. Don't ask me how. Something, they say you attract something, but some miracle, whatever it is, they were kept together. And his father, who spoke Russian, would go out at nighttime by the fence, I guess, or I guess it was a fence. And a Ukrainian farmer came, and they became friends. And the Ukrainian farmer would occasionally bring them some food to his father. And his mother would take the food. And this, to me, is a miracle in itself if you think the dynamics in a camp like that. And if he gave them a piece of bread, there were 4 of them. She would cut it into 10 pieces and give 6 of them away. What kind of spirit did she have? What kind of compassion did she have that she didn't keep it just for them? And one night the farmer said to his father, "Do you know why you've come here?" And he said, "Yes, to work." And the farmer said, no, to die. And I don't want you to die. Now you have to, this is an extraordinary story. And why? What were they attracting? And so the farmer said, I want you to meet me and bring your family at a certain so many days in advance. And so that night they all went out there in the dark of the moon, and the farmer cut them out of the fence and took them to his farm. And he had dug underneath the chicken yard a little cave. And there he put the grandmother, the father, the mother, and he took the little boy into his home. And I said, the little boy, don't ever talk to me. And the little boy who was now my client and star, had a lot of terrible experiences. But what I'm saying here, they eventually were freed by partisans. They walked from the Ukraine to Budapest while the war was still on. And halfway there, or I don't know exactly how many, the war ended. And then they got back to Budapest, and then they walked to Rome. And eventually they escaped to Canada, and they lived in Canada. And the thing that I know about him is that he has a really happy attitude about life. He's a very positive person. I mean, he doesn't have post-traumatic stress disorder. And you would say he could probably have a reason for having post-traumatic stress. But what I believe is that the roots that we start our life with is form some kind of a basis for us of trust or not trust. And so I want you to really look back and see what were your beginnings so that you can heal them. And I know you can heal them. And there are these simple things you can do. The other thing that we know changes your brain is having a spiritual path, meditating. They actually, Harvard has done a study about this. And meditating changes your rewiring. Rewires part of your brain. And the other thing is finding community. It's like finding some people that you care about, that you feel supported by. And the other thing is physical activity, is to do something with your body, whether it's aerobics or yoga or dancing. Occasionally I put on my tap shoes, because I still have them from when I was a kid, and do a little, not so good anymore, but I do a little, turn on the music loud, and I do a little tap dance to myself and my dogs, because I wouldn't tap dance up here. But it's like, have something that's fun in your life that you do physically. And it can be anything. It can be anything that's fun for you, maybe gardening. But find some way to use your body, because what you're doing in all of these different things is you're creating a base of positive energy. And those of you who have read The Secret, it's all about the law of attraction. It's like we do attract. We have some kind of a power to attract to us in our lives, but we also attract negativity. And that's why it's so important to heal our own minds, and also your body gets better. I mean, I just told you how old I was, and you wanted me 10 years younger, which is fine with me. But I think I'm almost 80. So it's like it's because I'm really excited about life. I have lots and lots of people that I love. I'm learning all the time, and that's really fun for me. And I feel really good about my life. I don't think I'm better than anybody. I don't think I'm worse than anybody. So I don't put people on pedestals, except His Holiness. I put him on a pedestal, and some other people I know. Stan Groff I put on a pedestal, that's for sure. But they're mentors for me. I want to be like them. Laura Huxley I want to be like Laura Huxley when I'm 96. And so we have the opportunity to choose and choose again and choose again. And I was kidding, I think Tomas, the other day I said, or somebody here, I said, well, when I fall down on my face again, like I've done many times, I goof up or I do something wrong, I say to myself, well, I'm this further ahead than I was before. I'll stand up over here. And so don't beat yourself up for making mistakes. It just keeps you stuck in negativity. And do say, okay, I'm going to stand up over here. I'm a few steps ahead of where I was before. And if you can begin to use the healing of your mind to seek blessings for yourself and others, your life actually transforms and changes. And we all have the power within us to do that. I think it comes from the spirit within us. I believe we are divine beings having a human experience. And it's totally okay with me if nobody agrees with me. One of the worst things you can do that's a big ego trip is always be right. Do any of you know anybody who's always right? If you have that habit, you better start changing it. I mean, I think of politics sometimes where people can't believe they made a mistake. We learn from our mistakes. We learn from every time we fall down. We learn from our mistakes. And when we learn to learn from our mistakes, we grow. We grow. And we become more authentic and more real and more in harmony with ourselves. So they say, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. It's alignment. I'm not supposed to touch this. With your heart and your head. It's not stupid. It's wise. And wisdom is when your head and your heart in alignment. Because wisdom is also a faculty of the heart. And then you use your intellect to support you and to find ways and to reach out and have more compassion in your life. And so what I wanted to do, I think we're supposed to stop pretty soon. And what I wanted to do, though, is first read you a poem. And this is a very famous American poet, and I just have the first stanza. It's William Wordsworth, and the name of it is, the name of the poem I think is Eternity, something like that. And this is what it says. Our life star, the radiance within us, hath elsewhere its beginning, and cometh from afar, trailing clouds of glory from God, who is our home. And so when we talk about destiny and we talk about meaning, yes, forgiveness and finding the love in our life, it's an inside job and it's already there. We just have to get rid of what keeps us from experiencing it. There's a part of you that's already healed. There's a part of you that knows. There's a part of you that knows more than you think you do. And so it's very, in this healing path, if you want it and if you're on it, you must open up yourself to your heart and feel it. And sometimes when we do that, we feel sadness, like the Buddhist priest who felt sadness for the Chinese. Sometimes we feel it for ourselves. We have grief about what was lost, but it's healing. And you all have within you the power to do that. And I know some of the people in this room, and I know some of the things that they have done to heal themselves. And I am so grateful that they have shared their parts of their stories with me so that I can learn from them. And I also get faith and courage. So this is a path we're all on. I think everybody's going home. Where else are you going to go if it isn't back to the source? In any way you want to do it. I mean, I think it's the experience that counts. We're all mammals, and we're all spiritual beings. And so finding the resonance to accept ourselves and care for ourselves, and this is not a big ego trip. That's grandiosity. This is we're all here together. Somehow or other, we're in a community of human beings. And to begin to feel a connection to that is when you open up your heart. Otherwise, you feel separate and alone, and life isn't much fun. So we wake up together, and we trod this path individually and together. And as we walk, it gets lighter. It gets lighter. And it gets easier. And it also gets more fun. And that's important. We need to have fun. We need to play. I should do another lecture sometime about the importance of play. It's really important. So find ways that you can forgive yourself, forgive the past, let it go, care about yourself, change the way you talk to yourself, and your path will get lighter, because your destiny is to become whole. And what I'd like you to do now is just shut your eyes for a minute. And I want you to imagine a light. Could be a little light within you, within your consciousness. Just imagine a little light. It was given to you, it's always been with you, no matter how dark the night is. That light has always been within you as a memory of your essence and your connection. And I'd like to see, for you to imagine that light getting bigger and bigger, filling this room. And like a star that radiates its light out, I want you to imagine this beautiful light that we share, and we have an individual expression of it, surrounding this planet, surrounding this earth, bringing healing to this planet, which is in so much pain right now. We have the opportunity to be a light. So see this beautiful planet and the creatures on it as surrounded with a glow, a light. And there are other people all over this planet that are doing this, in teaching, in healing, in loving each other, in taking care of the earth, the animals on it. There are so many of us that we form a circle of hands and light around the planet. And bring that light back with you. Keep it in your heart to give you light. Finding your own destiny, the own meaning in your life. Being on your path and knowing it. Thank you. We're going to just take a little break now for 20 minutes. 20 minutes, Tomas? 15, like that. We'll ring a bell or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Just take a break, stand up, stretch, go out to get some tea if you want to, and then come back and we're going to have a time of dialogue. You need to start using the muscle of your positive mind to heal yourself, so that you begin to push the old pattern out, and then the new pattern begins to become established in your mind. And I know that you can do it, and I know it works for people, because I've had so many years now teaching me that yes, people can do it. And they gradually begin to, it becomes a habit. It begins to become a habit. So that's one way to do it. And the other thing, too, is don't hang around people who are toxic. Don't hang around people who are feeding you negative energy all the time. There's something called a suppressive personality. And a suppressive personality is people around them fall apart, but they don't. But other people like feel it, that you feel it. It's like sometimes it's so subtle, or it's funny to them, but it's a dart. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not funny. It's a negative jab at you. And so surround yourself with people. I'm not saying nobody's perfect, and we all make mistakes, but surround yourself with people who are on the path where you want to go. Be the change you want to see in the world. It's like sometimes I'm working with somebody and they go to a past life, and what I've learned is to trust what comes up for them as part of their path, their next step. And wherever they go is I'm willing to support them going there. And if you trust your process, like I was telling to Iris, that take the thing that comes up for you, because take it up, because your soul is giving you a message there. Your soul is giving you guidance there. So if people go to a past life, I affirm it, and I have them look for what the meaning is in it. What is it teaching them in present time? Whether if they go to pre and perinatal, which help wire our brains, so it's important, I think, to look at that. And also it's important for preventing more abuse and more trauma. They go there. And sometimes I make a suggestion, and they don't go there. So I have to be willing to let it go. One of the things I've learned in therapy is that I must not box people in with what I know or think or believe as a therapist, because I've been wrong so many times where I give my little therapeutic, description of something, and that is not what they're experiencing, or it's not where they go. And so we have to hold our knowing lightly and be able to live in the question and in the mystery, and just have a lot of trust. And that doesn't mean I try to be stupid about things, but it's like I have a lot of trust that you know what you need to know. And so if you went there, I would absolutely trust that your soul, your spirit took you there, and that's the place you need to be. Somehow or other, we usually are in the place we need to be to learn the lesson we need to learn. Yeah. Don't let people put you down. Don't let people describe you to yourself. Don't let people, you are not a diagnosis, okay? You are much more than any diagnosis. And so when people try to tell you what's true for you, just step back. Maybe it is true, maybe it isn't true. So you're superior, who you are, in essence, is superior to what people say about you, to your story, and to any diagnosis. So, yeah, trust your path. And the other thing I've learned is sometimes people want you to give a reason, and sometimes I just have a gut feeling, but no reason, and I don't give a reason. I just say it doesn't feel right to me. And the reason why I don't give a reason is because they want to shoot down my reasons. And this is just a little wisdom I've learned. But if I say it doesn't feel right to me, it's kind of like, are they going to say, well, you don't have any choice about this? Or are they going to say, you don't know what you're doing? Or are they saying you're out? Or I just say, it doesn't feel right to me. And then what I say is I have to trust myself. And sometimes I don't even know yet why it doesn't feel right to me. But down the path, I usually discover why it wasn't right for me. So I've just learned how to trust my responses. Like sometimes people in therapy, I will have an intuition, or I'll share something with them and they'll say, that doesn't feel right to me. And I always affirm it. Because what I'm trying to teach people is to trust themselves and find their own inner guidance and wisdom. And so that's what I would say to you is trust that. Because people have their own agendas, And many times I've had that feeling and I've gone forward anyway because I thought I should, or because somebody talked me into it. and it was inconsistent. I was not congruent with myself, and it's usually been in the wrong way. So have courage and just stay in your truth. People do heal. They do.